Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the FPP program, day 2. Today has been a great privilege and honor to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Ashok Hedges. He's been the Dean, School of Arts, Humanity and Social Sciences in Chanakya University, Bangalore. Served as professor in the Department of Psychology, Bangalore University for over 35 years. Also as adjunct faculty in Central University, Kannur 2000. Held very prestigious position as chairman, Board of Studies, Board of Examination in Karnataka and outside Karnataka. Been as a director for ICSSR and Sri Aurobindo Integral Education 2021 and 2022. Guided over 14 PhD students, and I'm one of them, and 4 are under progress. Sir's area of research has been in the field of Indian psychology, comparative of study of Eastern and Western perspectives. Sir has been personally invited by Sage and Emblem Publication to write an article on Hinduism perspectives on adult learning and organizational learning at workplace. Written study material for Karnataka State Open University, been as a core team member in developing their training modules for Karnataka State Department of Education and Health, course coordinator for 2 refresher courses in psychology. So also works as a consultant to organization for psychometric test development, trainer, conducted workshops on human-related issues for parents, corporates, and children. Post-retirement, Sir went on to publish 15 articles for national and international journals. Recently, also he published a book on research methodology. Sir, this has been a short description of your accolades and achievement, and I'm pretty sure the participants are going to learn a lot from you. Over to you, Ashok, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Akila. Okay, so let me thank Jyoti Nivas College and the organizers, Dr. Rama and Dr. Akila. So I remember my school days. I started my career in Jyoti Nivas College back in 1980. So it's a nice coming back to the college where I started my work. Okay. So today, I think we are in the verge of transformation in the field of education. So fortunately, we have NEP coming in, National Education Policy, that is coming in, and people are concerned about how to bring about a change in the education system. So from this perspective, I congratulate the college and the IQAC team for thinking in terms of deliberating on the issues where the quality of higher education can be enhanced. So from this perspective, the institution requires a complement in this particular perspective is concerned. Now, the topic that is being given to me is strategies for curriculum design and development. Now, why we think in terms of this? So far, we have been used to a particular type of pedagogy, and then the colleges and schools and the entire education system has the primary orientation of access is a major factor. So when you say access, people want to know many of the people have to have access to the colleges or access to education. So from that point of view, every year, new colleges and institutions have been started, and then the enrollment is a major factor. And this is the things that we have seen. But when you look at what exactly is the output of these particular colleges are concerned, now, no matter what the stream of education the individual is in, we find that the major problem or the major complaint from the employers is that no matter what the records or the educational records the student has, unemployability is an important factor. So the person may say that I have a distinction in a particular subject or in a particular course, but the employer says that I am not, you are not employable at all. This is one factor. And then the entire purpose or the course of education itself has undergone a change. And even if you ask engineering students, they say that I have completed my engineering, but I don't know what I have learned. So from this perspective, we have to look into, can we think in terms of the curriculum design? What is the importance of curriculum design? And how to think in terms of developing new design so that the purpose of education can be understood or can be served. Now, when you talk in terms of education, the two things that comes to my mind, one is, say for example, learning is a major factor of education. And when you look at learning, there are two classical definitions of learning. One is, say for example, acquisition of knowledge, and the other is the transformation of behavior or a change in the behavior. Unfortunately, all of our the education system, right from the British system of education that came into the existence, education referred to the acquisition of knowledge, and that's where the textbooks are there and the rote learning is emphasized, and then so amount of knowledge. But in the 21st century, when you had IT revolution and globalization, and now when we have let us say our pet friend like Google, and so acquisition of knowledge is in the fingertips. So any student, any individual can have lot of information from the Google itself. Now, I will not going to make a value judgment as to whether how far the Google information is right or wrong, or how much of it is valid or invalid. But the person, anyone can have a lot of information from that particular perspective is concerned. Now, if that is the case, what is the role of a college? What is the role of teachers in the process of learning is concerned? So from that point of view, there is a need for us to think in terms of changing our, let us say, curriculum, changing our curriculum design in such a way that the learning can take the second dimension, namely, change in the behavior. I am an engineering student, but with that particular skill, I can better myself or contribute to the society in a particular manner. Or if a student of arts, science, or social sciences, etc., can I, let us say, see as a result of my education, can I see something change in myself? Can I bring about a change in the society? Can I bring about a change in the way in which I live and I interact with the others is an important factor. So from that point of view, the National Education Policy also talks about holistic education, integral education, component, and etc. is concerned. So from that point of view, we feel that the curriculum design and development is necessary, and there are several strategies that are there that help us in bringing about a change in the curriculum design is concerned. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, what is the importance of curriculum? So, I was referring, and I found that the 4 categories of conceptualizing the curriculum becomes an essential factor. So they are, first one, structure and content of a unit or a subject. Okay, so probably when you talk in terms of how do you develop a particular curriculum, importance of curriculum is that how do you structure, how do you content of a unit or a subject. I don't know what is the background of the, let us say, the participants here. I understand that there are several teachers and professors from different levels. And if, say, for example, if I go back and retrospect my own experience as a teacher, I started teaching when it was an annual scheme. And then it went on to, let us say, semester scheme. And by the end of my term, you call it as CBSE, CBCS, credit-based system came in. And now we are talking in terms of, let us say, NEP component is coming up. So how exactly the teachers or the educators brought about a change in the content and structure of that curriculum? How seriously it was brought in was a major factor. When annual came, was transformed into semester, what they did was in the annual 8 units, 8 chapters were there. Cut that 8 into 4 and 4. Now, when this came into credit-based system, now you tend to identify 10 hours is required, 12 hours is required, 14 hours is required. So you brought about a change. Have we really looked into how far we have brought about a continuity or a chain or the significance or the rationale on which we have tried to structure our syllabus is a major factor. Structure and content of a program is the next one. So what do you mean by this? That means what should a program should consist of is a factor that we need to look into consideration. So that is the second point which we need to look into. So the third one is, how we are facilitating the learning is an important factor, and the way in which the student and the teacher relationship is established is another factor. Again, when choice-based credit system came in, a new concept is added. Say, for example, LTP. So, what is this LTP? So, lecture, tutorial, and practical. And how exactly the rationale for LTP is that to facilitate a greater degree of interaction between the teacher and the student. But how exactly the LTP was practiced is a far away from what was expected. Okay. So these are the four aspects of the curriculum is concerned. Next slide. Okay. Now, when we look at designing the curriculum, so what are the factors that we need to look into? The steps in designing the curriculum. So first one is course definition. So probably we now talk about objectives of a particular course. Okay, so what is the course definition? What ultimately this particular course refers to? Now, when we talk in terms of let us say NEP, we have a concept what is called as a major and a minor, and skill based and competency based, and these sort of different let us say aspects that are there, and you have to let us say identify what do you mean by the course and define that particular course is the first step. The second one is after defining the course, the subject identification. What is the subject you want to introduce in that particular, let's say, curriculum is a factor. Now, no matter what subject you take, there are several branches, there are several specializations, there are several components that are there, and anything and everything cannot be brought into the curriculum. And that's where you have to make a choice, and that's where subject identification play an important role. The third would be information collection and presentation. So when you say curriculum, how do you, let us say, develop a curriculum? First one is information collection. What are the types of information that are available? So probably when we look at, you are doing a research, you talk in terms of review of literature. Similarly, when you are designing a curriculum also, and identify what are the information that is available. Many of the times, I normally I used to make fun of whenever we teach a classical theory of learning, popularly known as Pavlov's theory of learning, dog and salivation. And I used to say that it's not just the connection between the dog and the salivation. The process of learning is beyond this particular salivation process is concerned. So no matter in talking about the let us say what exactly transpired, or many of the information would have become an obsolete, and you may have to let us say only as a matter of reference you may have to have it, and how do you present that particular information play an important role. So if you highlight on the experiments, the animals and etc., the extension of that particular learning to the present context may be lost. So that is where the identification of information collection and presentation play an important role, and choosing effective pedagogy for teaching and learning. I think we will discuss this slightly later on, because how do you teach? So probably when we talk in terms of subjects which have practicals and subjects we do not have practicals. So what do you mean by the practicals? The primary purpose of practicals is to enhance the skills, the practical skills in the individuals are concerned. So how do you bring about that particular skill? So you may have a laboratory, and whether, especially when you talk in terms of laboratory in social sciences and humanities, so laboratory is an artificial situation, whereas laboratory, the outside world is a real laboratory. Is it possible for you to bring about those skills, etc.? So what is the pedagogy that you have to follow is a factor that you need to consider. And then involving student and students in research through course design and development of that particular course. This is an important factor. Ultimately, the end user of, or when you take, say, for example, stakeholder in the education system, it is the students. I know, especially in the field of science and technology, the development in the science and technology is so fast that the curriculum or the academia is not able to match or is not able to bring back the current things in the syllabus is concerned or in the course curriculum is concerned. So what happens there? Unfortunately, in our education system, the syllabus is revised not periodically or not regularly. So as a result of it, what will happen? Until and unless one circle of is completed, the scope for bringing about a let us say change in the syllabus may not be there at all. But in reality, the change in that particular field would have been so fast that teacher as well as the students know very well that what they are learning is not meaningful at all. But what happens there? The teacher says that I have to teach because that is in the syllabus. Students will learn because it is there in the it comes in the examination. So this is where the involvement of students in the course design or in the let us say curriculum design play an important role. Next slide. Okay. So what is the need for this particular let us say course development? Okay. So student-centric curriculum design, that's where SECD, and implementation should focus on imparting the information in respective subjects effectively to enhance the knowledge of the students and utilizing these knowledge to progress further by creating knowledge through research. Now look at this particular component, especially in our let us say academic environment, where you have students from different socio-cultural background, socio-demographic, socio-economic factors background. There could be first generation students. There can be when you have this sort of a heterogeneous group, so development of a curriculum design or the student-centric curriculum design is a very challenging factor, and you may have to look into the background information or the prior knowledge of the students are concerned. Now, probably when you look at when you are starting a career as a teacher, or even after the let us say you are take up the role of a teacher and play that role of a teacher. Now, some of us we say that what is your concentration, what is your focus during the class, whether it is the front benchers or the middle benchers or the back benchers. What is the if you look at whom do you cater to when you are talking in terms of when you prepare a lesson plan, whether you cater to the front benchers or in terms of average learners or bright learners or learners who are slow learners. This is a factor. When you have a heterogeneous group, how do you take into consideration these is a factor. So student-centric curriculum design have to look into these aspects are concerned. Now, the two essential ingredients of student-centric curriculum design and implementation are again innovation in knowledge imparting methodologies and involvement of students in research. So these are the two important factors. So innovation in knowledge imparting methodology. Now I remember again when make use of alternative methods of teaching, not just talk and the chalk and talk component is concerned. So there used to be the transparency sheets that used to come in, overhead projectors and transparency sheets have to be used, and whether the teachers have got the training as to how to prepare a OHP sheet was a factor. And that was also at that time a transparency sheet was not available everywhere. Only in certain places you used to get it, and each sheet costed about 3 rupees or etc. And then teachers used to say, so it has to make use of maximum use of the space. So from left hand top corner to the right hand bottom corner, everything is written in manuscript, and the purpose for so when you present it in a manuscript, so what happens, whether the students are able to understand your handwriting and all those components came. And then now we have what is called the PPT, PowerPoint presentation. And when it comes to the PowerPoint presentation, how do you prepare a PowerPoint presentation? To make it more attractive, you use animation, you use music, you use all that. So as a result of what can happen, those things may become more attractive than what you are saying. So that is where implementation, innovation in imparting methodology. So what is the use, what are the merits and demerits of these components may have to be tried out, and then involvement of students in research. So in your research, if you can involve the students, probably students' perception also would help you in redesigning that particular component is concerned. Okay, and then involving students in the designing of that particular curriculum, their own curriculum. Student centered, when you say, students may say that I want to study this particular component, I want this particular aspect to be included. Is it possible for us to make use of that aspect also while designing the curriculum is concerned? Next slide, please. Okay. What is the current status? I think this point we have already talked about, I think. So there are many demands to improve curriculum design in order to increase global competitiveness. But there are constraints from limited resources, time, reduced professional autonomy, changes in political and professional drivers, etc. So this is what is happening. There is a need for a change. So all the stakeholders perceive that whatever that is existing need to change. But when it comes to improving the curriculum design, there are several aspects that are there. One is global competitiveness. So if a student study here, so what is the opportunity job? Again, we are concerned about what is called as a brain drain we were talking about. So what do you mean by that? So probably when you look at 4-year degree course, and when you have a 3-year degree course, and then when the individual has to go for a master's degree elsewhere, their education system requires 16 years of study before they enter into masters, and that do not fit into our system. So one more year the individual may have to study. These are all when it comes to the global aspects are concerned. One is the structure of the programs elsewhere, and then the competitiveness. So probably when you look at let us say machine learning, for example, there are specific 1 or 2 institutions in the West that has a greater demand for the course, and that's where there is a lot of demand for a course that is run by those institutions are concerned. So competitiveness is a factor, and whereas there are several constraints. So what are the constraints? One is resources may not be there, time is very short. So within that short period of time, it may not be possible for us, because every time there is a syllabus that is being revised or prepared, lot of things come in, and in a hurry we may have to let us say do that. I remember I have a board of studies in the afternoon, and what all those exercises that took place, though ideologically we started the process 6 months ago, today morning still I got a revised version of that. So what do you mean by that? The time is a factor. Reduced professional autonomy, this is a major factor. So when we have a structure, the structure may not allow give the autonomy to bring about a change. So uniformity is required across the school, across the stream. So so in order to have homogeneity across the stream, from the administrative point of view, they may say that this cannot be allowed. Bring in uniformity across the school, because comparison across the stream becomes difficult, and all those factors. So that's one. And then changes in the political and professional drivers are an important factor. So when political system brings about a certain change, now that may go for or against the systems that are there. So this is one of the let's say current status with regard to the education system, and the influence of government enforcing an agenda that relates primarily to increasing concern with economic competitiveness. This is a factor that we find, and specific skills are required from workforce. This is where I was talking about unemployability. We talk about. So can we integrate the industry also into the curriculum design? So as a result of it, what will happen? Acceptance of the students and the preparedness of the students for future employment would be possible. Next slide. Okay, so curriculum for the present generation. So innovative curriculum design requires a broad view, and it may be too difficult for individual academics to see the map of influences and negotiate a path through them that they can see as positive for their students. So when you say an innovative curriculum design, it requires a broader view. Again, when you talk in terms, that's where when we talk in terms of national education policy, now the concept of liberal arts is coming up. So when you say a liberal arts, so that is where a broader perspective comes into the picture. Okay. Now, what do you mean by that? Now, suppose, for example, if we are studying the same chapter, now coming from a social science background, if I say, for example, I want to study poverty, poverty is a major factor that is considered as a detrimental factor for the overall development of the mankind. And if I have to study poverty, I define from a psychology background, I define poverty from my own perspective, whereas a sociologist defines poverty from his own or her own perspective, whereas an economics professor defines poverty from the economic perspective, and we are in silos, and we do not come together about an integrated or a holistic definition of poverty, so that we can appropriate corrective measures can be taken. That is where this particular overall broad map becomes an essential factor, and innovative curriculum design should look into these aspects. So this is one aspect of concept. And the institutional structures that recognize and reward positive examples are very much essential. So this is where, fortunately, when we have the liberal arts coming up, or the new education policy, if it is brought in and implemented effectively, probably this sort of a examples, or this sort of a positive examples are likely to occur, so that the curriculum itself can have a paradigm shift in the development and delivery of the curriculum is concerned. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So what are the need for student-centered curriculum development? One is the student engagement. So how far students are engaged in a typical classroom, that is one aspect, and how far the student is engaged in the process of learning. So one is during the class hour, during the stay of a student in the institution or in the college or in the educational place, how the student is engaged, and afterwards also how the individual is engaged in the entire education process is concerned. So student engagement is a factor. Student empowerment is a factor. How do you empower a student, especially when we are talking in terms of a multicultural or very heterogeneous group of students are there? How can you empower the student? So the strategy that you should use for a front bencher, for a middle bencher, or for a back bencher should be different. So you need to empower all the three sections of the students are concerned. So that is where student empowerment play an important role. Student involvement. How do you involve the students? As I said earlier, involvement in the curriculum design is one factor, but even during the let us say the regular class also, how do you involve the students in a classroom situation? Probably in the next few slides, I will be telling about some of the strategies that you could use for enhancing this particular student involvement. And topicality, to engage students' interest. Okay, so whatever they are studying, they should be of a relevant topic. Topical here refers to that is more relevant today. I was giving an example sometime, So even though the syllabi is obsolete, what is the current thing also you can brought in, so that individual would be able to engage or create interest in that particular individual is concerned. So there may be a theory. So suppose, for example, if you are talking in terms of social science, arts faculty, a theory may be there. That theory may be developed in 18th century, 19th century, whatever that be. But the society has undergone so much of change, and the theory may not be completely be applicable to understand that phenomenon now. But how far, what are those components that can be brought in to understand the current society? If it is brought in, the students' interest will be possible. So that's one factor. And especially in a developing country like ours, the curriculum should also ensure the employability of the students. So, say, for example, whether, the grades is an important factor, but apart from the grades also, the skills that the individual will learn, can that make an individual to be self-employed or employable is a factor. So these are the needs of student-centered, course development or course design is concerned. Next slide, please. Okay. What are the factors that need to be considered while developing this? First one, complexity of the environment. So we can think in terms of let us say those bringing about the change, etc. But the environment is a factor that we need to look into. So whether we are a government college, whether it's an autonomous college, whether it's a private university, whether what type of environment we are in is a factor that need to be considered. So suppose, for example, you are starting an institution in an urban setup, when you are starting a curriculum design in a rural area. Okay, so what are the complexity that are involved in the academic environment is a factor that we need to look into. Stakeholder engagement. To what extent the stakeholders are involved? Who are all the stakeholders here? So the management, the teachers, the students, then the society, the parents, and the employers, and the broader society in general. So how far you are able to integrate, bring in all those factors or all those different agencies to come in the preparation of and the delivery of the curriculum or delivery of the education system is another factor that we need to consider. So culture, probably yesterday, I think I was watching a in a news channel, and they were saying that how the madrasas are the traditional religious institutions also have to bring in the a component of modern education also. So what is the stakeholder engagement there? Whether the religious leaders are favorable for that, whether they are agreeable for these components, and etc. So stakeholder engagement is a factor. Cultural and psychological aspects is another factor. I think this point we have already discussed about. So what are the cultural background of the individuals and the psychological aspects in terms of their motivation and their individual differences in their personality, temperament, all those factors play an important role. Importance of followers. Who are the followers of this stream is a factor. So you may design let us say a curriculum, but who has to deliver that? So the delivery has to be from the teachers, and the teachers are do not agree to this, then what will happen? So this is where the importance of the followers is a factor. Accountability, is it possible for you to accountable for whatever you do is a factor. Now when we say, for example, probably when we look at internal assessment is a factor, formative assessment or end term examination assessment. So is it is a student accountable for whatever that the student is doing, or is a teacher accountable for whatever the practices that the individual teacher uses in the process of delivery of the system or the delivery of the course is concerned? Accountability, is it possible for us to arrive at that particular accountability factors that are there? And then widening participation is a factor, whether how far people participate in this particular process of curriculum design or curriculum redesign. Increasing employability, this also we have already talked about. Lifelong learning, is it possible for us to broaden the horizon of learning itself? Learning should not be limited only to, when we look at our education system, primary education till the higher education is concerned. So from the 8th standard, whatever the student studies will be repeated in 9th, 10th, first PUC, second PUC, and some of the basics also comes in the first year degree also. Okay, so is there a need to study the same thing, or is it possible for us to link these factors in a more meaningful, in a more thematic manner is a factor? So lifelong learning factor should be brought in. You can't say that I study first semester, it's over, I need not have to look back and study again what is it. So is it possible for us to design a curriculum so that whatever I have studied, somewhere even after my formal education is over, whatever that I have learned helps me in my understanding my own life is a factor. So lifelong learning is a factor. International competition is a factor. That's your survival tend to depend upon the international competition. Professional and stakeholders and emphasis on students' ownership of their course is an important factor. So when you involve students, then automatically they say that we are asked and our opinion is brought in when developing the design. So as a result of it, what will happen? The students own. Quite often I used to make this observation whenever I handle sessions for teachers. When we were students, we at the end of the examination, when the marks card used to come, we used to say that we have got the marks. And nowadays, when a student is asked when the result has come, now the students say they have given the marks. So they don't own the marks. They say that the teachers have given the marks. So what do you mean by that? The ownership of whatever the learning that has taken place in me, this is where an important factor is. So how do you develop this particular factor? Ownership that I am studying, I have chosen this particular topic. this particular course and I own this and hold this to my heart, close to heart, is an important factor. Next slide. Okay. What are the steps that are involved in student-centered curriculum development program? So the 5 factors that we need to look into is encourage, introduce, enable, promote, and enable ultimately. Now, what do you mean by this? So encourage students' confidence. So students knew what was expected of them from week to week regarding rooms, lectures, teaching staff, and etc. So encourage the students to this. Okay, so the first factor would be this. So confidence. So how do you bring in this particular confidence is a factor. Introduce a range of learning activities, giving students the early opportunity to interact with peers and build relationship with lecturers and etc. Now this is an important factor. Now, when I retrospect and look at our education system, I think you can also retrospect from your end also. When we were in, let us say, the primary school, okay, and when we moved away from, let us say, fourth standard to fifth standard, or maybe from seventh standard to high school. So, in those days we used to have what is called as a Saraswati Puja. Before the examination dates are announced, they used to give a hall ticket, admission ticket, and on that day there used to be a sort of a class social like thing. And I still remember my own class teacher, along with us, also started crying that from next year onwards we won't be meeting each other and etc. So the amount of emotional bondage that take place in the primary school level, okay, the type of interaction, the type of dependency, the type of all sort of bondage that establishes between the teacher and the student. Unfortunately, in our environment, as a student moves further, the bondage should be much more stronger. But the distance between the teacher and the student goes on increasing as the individual moves away. So this is what an important factor. I remember my own, let us say, college days, the environment in which my college environment provided is that teacher-student relationship was very sort of a friendly thing. So a person would have been a science. I am a art student, but I had a very close relationship with science faculty. Okay, and I was a student of Sanskrit, but I had a very close relationship with Kannada teacher. So this is a factor. Introduce a sort of learning activities and enable opportunity to interact with peer group and the lecturers is a factor. And enable students to engage with module material, learn from their own experience, and appreciate how these are relevant to their future roles. This is where you try to connect what you are studying now. Some of it may be only from an academic purpose you may have to study, but the reality or the real meaning of it you are likely to experience in your future. So this sort of a linking the learning to the future of the individual, whether it is in his personal life or in an occupational or a professional life, if it is brought in, probably the curriculum would be much more effective and the purpose or the goal of education could be fulfilled. Promote growth interaction, group interaction across branch programs and allow students to clarify their values and etc. So this is where confusion tend to take place at times when especially the students of social science study. There are several isms and schools that come in, and the individual may be enamored by a particular school of thought, and if there is every likelihood that the individual may be let us say stick on or strictly adhere to that particular school. So this sort of an objective evaluation, objective clarification of these values, to what extent adhering to these particular value can be a detrimental factor to the individual. These factors has to be let us say developed, and then enable students to the anticipate and interact with module content. This point I think we have already discussed. So is it possible for us to integrate the students or involve students in the curriculum development is concerned? Next slide, please. Okay, what should be the focus of our curriculum design? So the first one would be teacher-based curriculum, subject-based curriculum, choice-based curriculum, and competency-based curriculum. So if we look at, let us say, curriculum design, so can we think in terms of these four aspects as a focal point? One is teacher-based. So that means I have a greater competency or a greater efficiency in a particular aspect. Can a teacher get freedom or autonomy in developing a curriculum based on his or her own competency is concerned? This is one. Subject-based curriculum. So when you look at the outcome of the education is concerned, what should be the subject so that the amount of knowledge that the individual gets in that particular subject would be beneficial to the student in the future. So that is where subject-based curriculum comes in. So suppose, for example, if you say one particular, let us say, subject, so there are different, subject matter that is there. So what all the things that need to be included in a 4-year course or a 3-year course, in what manner these subjects have to be, let us say, integrated or planned in a thematic manner, etc. So that is where the subject-based curriculum. Choice-based curriculum, whether to what extent the student as well as the teachers have a choice in offering a course or in taking up a course is there, and the competency-based curriculum. So to what extent the course which you are designing enables the individual to become competent. So 4 areas of focus in the curriculum design is teacher-based, subject-based, choice-based, and competency-based. If you can integrate these 4, probably the beautiful curriculum can be developed. Next slide, please. Okay. So what are the alternative strategies that are available for, let us say, curriculum development or an alternative system for curriculum? First one, problem-based learning. So can the learning be, let us say, problem-based? Okay. So when you look at, let us say, curriculum development itself, can the entire subject matter be presented in the form of a problem and identifying the strategies to solve this particular problem? Teacher, along with the students, are able to, let us say, identify the problem and then arrive at a solution. So probably when you look at a higher level, when we talk in terms of a research, especially when we talk in terms of a type of research, we are talking about the action research. So what do you mean by the action research? So ultimately, I have a problem, and no matter what it is, I have to find a solution to that particular problem. So the entire process of learning, if it is problem-based strategy that is used, now that can be useful in certain subjects, or this is where one of the strategies that is possible for you. Blended learning, thanks to pandemic, so we are now familiar with what is called as a blended learning approach is concerned. So what are the different offline, online classes that are there that could be made use of? So that is one factor we could make use of in learning. So different modes. So some through online. This is where when you talk in terms of open elective or MOOC and all those components that can be made use of. Or a teacher from his own or her own place can deliver lecture or take the classes and handle the session. And some can be in the classroom, typical classroom, and etc. So blended learning is another factor. Then integrated learning is another factor that we can think in terms of. So this is where different aspects in the process. So as I said, 4 focus I was talking about, all the 4 focus are considered into and integrated into holistic development of the child is concerned or the student is concerned. So integrated learning is one. And then you have outcome-based learning. So this is where, especially when you talk in terms of subjects in like science, what is the outcome of this particular learning? Suppose, for example, computer science I was talking about. Now, probably there was a debate in terms of, when you say computer science became an important component, we found that BCA and became an important, bachelor in computer science. And then you also had a master's in computer science. And there was also BE in computer science. And that became a problem now. So, an employer prefers a BE graduate compared to a bachelor in computer science, or the vice versa. So as a result of it, what will happen? The demand for that particular course. So on what basis you have develop this particular course is an important factor. So outcome-based learning is a factor that we need to look into. So that's a factor that we need to look into. And now we have what is called as liberal education. So when you have liberal arts component, where full freedom is provided to the student to choose whatever the students want. Now, this is an important component. So what do you mean by that? Our system now, what we have is, a curriculum is developed, and when a curriculum is developed, the student has to study whether the individual likes or not. The student has to learn all those subject matter that is there, or the course that is there. But the individual may have an interest in some other subject. You can't say that a person who is studying psychology cannot study physics, or I may be interested in physics, but I may be interested in music also, but I can't study music at all. So this is where the concept of liberal arts becoming an important component. And is it possible for us to make use of that particular liberal arts aspect also is a factor that we can look into. So that's these are some of the let us say student-focused groups is another factor. The entire process of learning can be facilitated by the students. So probably in the process of strategies, learning, the entire pedagogy I was talking about, in the pedagogy itself, this can be let us say brought in. So students themselves, the peer group learning we talk about. So this peer group learning itself can be a factor that could be. Next slide. Okay. So the way ahead, developing new pedagogy is an important factor. I remember, I was talking in terms of say how the environment in which we had a system in our when I was in college. So how do you involve students in the classroom? So you may ask a question, or you may I remember what are the types of facilitating factor for teacher-student relationship is concerned. Okay, I still remember one of my teacher used to always come with a three-piece suit, and then in the middle of the class, he used to stop the lecture and throw open a question to the class, and then whoever gives a right answer or a correct answer, he used to take out a 5-star chocolate that used to be in his inside coat and give it to him. Now, at that time, during the 1970s, Cadbury's chocolate or a 5-star chocolate was a luxury. A student, so that was a motivating factor. So similarly, what are the manner in which it is possible for you to encourage the student is a factor. Say for example, you have clubs, different associations. So how far you can mentor the students is a factor. So mentoring is a factor, and then how can you mentor the students is a strategy where it will be possible. Developing a new pedagogy in terms of how do you teach is a factor. So teacher role, unlike any other profession is concerned, there are it's a beautiful role. So every day, they say that teacher never retires, because he always deals with the younger mind, the younger generation. Whereas in all other professions, as you grow, others also will be growing along with you. So you have to meet the people of the same age or same temperament or same profession and etc. Whereas in the case of a teacher role, you may be growing old, but you will be interacting with the younger and younger generation is concerned. This is where you also have to bring about change in your own perspective, the manner in which you handle classes, the expectations of the students of nowadays. So this is one. And how do you use the different pedagogy is an important factor. So probably when you talk in terms of assessment component is concerned, so how do you think in terms of novel way of the assessment is concerned? Now we talk in terms of internal assessment. On what basis you can think of internal assessment is a factor that can be looked into. And introducing new assessment methods. This is where I was talking about. Is it only examination? Is it only now? Some of the let us say premier institutions say that we will be making use of Bloom's taxonomy. Well, I have let us say gone through. I have just tried to look into how exactly they are doing the Bloom's taxonomy. So the Bloom's taxonomy is there in their the manual or in their textbook or in their curriculum component. We follow Bloom's taxonomy, and that is there in the examination question paper. But when it comes to the answers of the students, there is no match between what is there in the Bloom's taxonomy, what is there in the question paper, and what the answers that is being written. So the entire process of the assessment itself, can it be in terms of these factors, is an important factor. So new methods of assessment can be thought of. Adding experimental components and experiential components is a factor. Facilitate the student to experiment on is a factor that can help the individual to learn, and experiential is another factor. So what do you mean by the experiential? This is where, when you look at andragogy, that is where the adult learning is concerned. So the learner learns what he learns. Okay, what he does is an important factor. That is where experimental and experiential component play an important role. So it should not be one way, make the learner to experience what the individual is learning. Facilitate the learner to experiment on himself or others. This is where I was talking about when you talk in terms of practicals. Can the individuals go out to the society, go out of the let's say educational institution, and learn what it is? Okay, so I was talking about poverty. So if you say poverty, give an opportunity, give an assignment for the students. Now, say I was talking about psychology, sociology, economics, political science. So if you have this, make them to go out of the institution, go to the slum, go to let's say different sections of the society, let them interact and try to find out, and say whether let them understand what exactly you mean by the poverty. Okay, so this is where experimental and experiential component play an important role. And arranging placement through innovative placement model is another important factor. So when you are developing a let us say a course, so involve the employers also into the course design. Okay, so when you are designing a course, if it is possible for you to involve the students also, the stakeholders, that is where the employers also. So employers know this is what we want. Okay, so you will be teaching them, or the students will be taught the factors that the employers are looking forward to. So this is a factor that we need to look into. So arrange the placement through innovative placement models. So there are several models for innovative placement. So one, as I said just now, in terms of say, for example, involving the employers or the industry in the curriculum design is one. Then campus recruitment is a popular practice that is being used. So get into contract, get into some sort of a MOU with certain organizations, local organizations, it would be possible. And then twinning is another factor that we find. A part of the curriculum is, when I was talking in terms of experimental or experiential. So a part of it they learn at the workplace itself, or at the place of, let us say, future employment place is a factor. And then probably the major factor which we find, especially in our setup is concerned, the communication play an important role. Soft skills play an important role. So can you bring in these, let us say, factors also into the curriculum design is a factor. So probably when you look at the NEP component, new education policy, the you have skill and competency components that are being thrusted upon. So what is the importance of that? That is where you try to look at the overall or the holistic development of the students are concerned. So these are all some of the let us say the factors that we need to look into when you want to develop the student-centric curriculum design. I think these are some of the factors that we need to look into. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Any questions, clarifications? I think the floor could be open. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for that very interesting talk on how we need to incorporate various factors into curriculum design. We have a question from Dr. Vignesh Kumar.
Okay.
Students have no clarity as to why they chose a particular subject.
Okay.
Their choice seems to be due to lack of interest in other subjects rather than interest in the subject that's chosen by them. So, how do we improve this? How do we change this? Is the question.
Okay. Now, this is where, before, this, we call it as a sort of a mentoring or a counseling component is concerned. Before a student enters into a college, and when you say, as a college, I have these different streams that are available. I have BA, I have BCom, I have BSc. So, have an interaction with the student as well as the stakeholder. Now, here in our environment, what we have is the parents play an important role, peer group play an important role, and the course that the student chooses tend to be influenced by these two. Okay, so this is where a sort of an orientation or has to take place between the college, the institution, with the stakeholders, these two factors. So probably when you say, for example, when a student comes for an admission, so have a particular day in which you have an orientation program, an orientation to the parents, to the students with regard to what are the factors on which this particular course, and followed by a sort of an assessment or a sort of a testing of the interest and aptitudes of the student, and then that may facilitate the process of learning is concerned, or choosing a course. So choosing a course by choice and not by a chance should be facilitated by the institution. And probably nowadays, especially in the urban setup, parents are agreeable. Now I find just day before yesterday, I had been to the department, and two young fellows came in, and they were asking, can we get an admission to MSc psychology course? Then I said, as per the rules, as per the regulation, you are not eligible because you are an engineering student. Okay. Now, when I asked them, they said that we had to fulfill the desires of our parents. Our parents wanted us to become engineers. We have taken that particular degree, but we don't want engineering profession. We want to be in this. So, fortunately, times are changing. So, if you can give a sort of an orientation, now you have a social media, you have media playing an important role. If you can, communicate all these factors through social media, if you can have an orientation, before a student chooses a course, I think that in that way it would be possible for us to facilitate students to choose a course that would be meaningful, that would be of interest to the student also.
Good morning, sir. I'm
Yeah.
CPP from Jyotinivas College. Your lecture covered all the aspects of the teaching learning process, and we learned a lot about student-centric curriculum. But as a teacher from the life science stream, and basically from the zoology stream, see, if I have to teach something to my city students who are in the urban area regarding like sericulture or apiculture or even ornamental fish culture. So for rural colleges or students who are studying there, even ornamental fish culture would be a very good entrepreneurial skill development. But how can we balance such kind of components in our curriculum when it comes to students who are in the cities? That is my question.
Right. So that's what I said. See, I was talking in terms of the 4 focus components in the process of learning is concerned. Okay. So when you say experiential, now probably we have almost all colleges say that you have a study tour. Okay. In reality, what happens in the study tour? Study may not be there at all. You may only go to a museum or a sort of a laboratory once, and half an hour or 1 hour you spend there, and you visit the other places of tourist importance. So this is what can be brought in. So when you say urban people, they would not have seen at all. This is where I say, when you use a simulation, now simulations are available. How to navigate a pilot, an aeroplane. Beautiful. Okay, models are there. And then at every step there is a test also for you to score. You score 100 out of 100. in the teaching module that tells you how to become a pilot. Based on that, can you actually go and start navigating a pilot, an aeroplane? Now, this is the limitation that is there. Okay, so when you are developing a simulation also, to what extent the real life exposure is possible is a factor. So if you say that study tour can be in terms of going to the rural area, taking them to a place where sericulture is being practiced, say for example Ramnagar, or say for example Chikballapur or Kolar. So if it is possible for you to do that, that would be a factor. That's one factor. And when it comes to some of these, let us say, science subjects are there, well-known laboratories and research centers are available. Can you make use of them, either a visit or a special lecture or a demonstration? So in that manner, it would be possible. Okay, so that would be one way in which it is possible. And then if you look at this also, when you say the student-based curriculum, so you can't have a universal or a uniform education system. So if you say, for example, rural area has to be developed, and these are the occupational opportunities available in rural area, develop those courses and offer the courses there. They need not have to come to Bangalore to study this. And when they study in Bangalore also, they cannot go and transfer that whatever they have learned in Bangalore to the rural area also. Okay, so this sort of a change is required, and if that is brought in, probably the real purpose of education can be achieved. Otherwise, it would be only a textbook oriented and implementation of whatever that is been learned. There is a gap between these.
Good morning, sir. Dr. Grace Thomas from Children's College from the Department of Chemistry. You've placed a lot of emphasis on including students in curriculum design. But in the present scenario, in most of our classes, we find that students themselves do not really have a clue as what they want from a particular program. So, considering that, would it be even feasible for them to play a constructive role in curriculum design? Other than that, like I would say that when a student has finished the program and when the student goes on to take up a job, it is only then that he or she would realize what has been the strength of the program that she has studied or the weakness of the program that she has studied. So wouldn't it be better to, involve an alumnus in the program development rather than a current student? Your views, sir.
Okay. So that tend to depend upon the subject that is being taught. Okay. Now, as you rightly said, in some of the technical subjects, the individual or the students may not have the practical knowledge or whatever that is happening. Okay. Whereas in other subjects, it is feasible, it is possible. What is it that I want to study? Okay. It's right that, when you say get a feedback of students, it doesn't mean that the current students. So as you rightly said, alumnus, when once I complete my course, I know very well these were the gaps. Okay. So when you involve them, they say that I want to study this. So probably when you have BOS, now one of the component of the BOS would be to involve a person from alumni also, person from the industry also. But how far they are able to contribute and how far their contribution can be integrated is a factor. Okay, I agree that not in all subjects the students would be able to contribute to the development of a design, but that also tend to depend upon certain subjects also. Okay, so in certain subjects it is possible. Suppose, for example, in languages, for example. Okay, students involved. This is what I want. Say, for example, in performing arts. Okay, I want to study this particular aspect. You can't say that I teach only this particular aspect. Whereas, as you rightly said, in some of the technical subjects like chemistry or advanced, let's say, science subjects, it may not be possible at all. So that is where the alumnus play an important role.
Ashok sir, thank you for the wonderful session. It was knowledge-filled. I have a question for you. Can you kindly elaborate on innovative assessment tools, especially looking at the current generation with your vast experience? Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. So what do you mean by innovative assessment? I was just going through some of the literature with regard to what are the new techniques of assessment is concerned. Okay, there are, probably what are the components of, let us say, assessment. So you say, for example, now you have end-term examination and then you also have internal assessment. What are the components of internal assessment you are thinking in terms of? It can be, say, for example, attendance. It can be in terms of assignments. It can be in terms of writing a record. So all these are the traditional component of internal assessment. What are the innovative ways? So can you give a sort of a group activity? Okay, and when you give a group activity, assessment can be an average overall performance of the group, and there is an individual component that is being added to that also. When you give a group assignment, not all members of the group will equally contribute towards the development of that particular, let us say, the activity is concerned. But when you have 3 groups in a, say, for example, you classify the entire class into 5 groups. Okay, components of the 5 groups, the activity comparison of these 5 groups can be possible. Some may be very good, some may be average, some may be poor. So based on that, the performance of the groups can be evaluated. Within the group also, some individuals may be performing more, some individuals may be performing, may only be, lip sympathy, or just for the sake of be there, they may be there. So individual criteria and the group criteria has to be told. This is one particular factor. Whatever the criterion you think in terms of, first thing is that, you say, for example, these are the parameters on which I am going to assess, should be made known. It is possible, if it is possible, the ideal way would be, is it possible for you to come to a sort of a contract with the students also? In the very first class itself, you say that these are the parameters on which I am going to evaluate. These are the criteria based on which I am going to give marks. And if, let us say, mutual contract is signed, that would be easier way. So as a result of it, what will happen now, there will not be, the amount of the frequency of contradictions or quarrels or conflicts can be reduced. This is one way of, an innovative way of assessment is concerned. So this is one factor. And if you believe and if you subscribe to, let us say, Bloom's taxonomy, okay, so develop an assessment procedure based on the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, critical thinking, synthesis, analyzing, problem solving. So if these components can be brought in, then the assessment would be. Assessment can also be possible. So innovative way would be, your assessment need not be confined only to the syllabus component that is there. So there may be a related topic which you feel is very much essential to give a broader perspective or a broader understanding of that particular phenomenon. So as a result of it, what you can do, give an assignment in that area, because what happens is, unfortunately, the environment in which we are there. So why do you want to study? Because it is there in the syllabus. Okay, so examination centered. If you can change that particular perspective, okay, so apart from examination, also there is something else which can make me more interested in that particular subject. So as a result of it, what will happen, that particular, let us say, learning also would be possible. I think all of you may be familiar with, let us say, what is called as learning styles. So students can vary in their learning modality. So some may be visualizers, some may be auditory, some may be kinesthetic. Okay, so can you think in terms of assessment, identify the learning style of the learners and give the assignment based on their learning style? As a result of it, what will happen now? Their involvement in the process of learning would be possible, and evaluation also would be possible. Okay, so these are some of the, let us say, strategies that you can work on. But whatever the new technique you think of, in the very first class itself, it should be made clear, and then mutual contract agreement with regard to these modalities and with regard to the evaluation technique. If it is arrived at, probably it will work out in a interesting manner. I remember very well when I was in PG, they said this is another important component. After the examination, allow the student to rate himself or herself, and then peer assessment is another factor. Okay, I evaluate my own self. I ask my friend to evaluate, and then probably the teacher also would evaluate. Okay, so look at the comparison between the two. Okay, initially the student may be very subjective. I may give 10 out of 10. Okay, whereas when you give it to a peer, that peer may give 8, or the teacher may give 7.5, or the teacher himself or herself may also give 9. So the process of this sort of a testing, self-evaluation, peer evaluation, and the teacher evaluation, if this is brought in right from the, let us say, first unit itself is concerned, do not wait for test or a terminal examination. That would be a factor that can help. These are some of the ways in which, the innovative methods of assessment or internal assessment can be brought in.
Thank you, sir, for patiently answering our questions in such great detail. I now request Dr. Sophia from the Department of Biochemistry to propose the vote of thanks.
No duty is more urgent than returning thanks. A very good morning to all. As we have come to an end of today's FTP Day 2, I deem it a great privilege to deliver this vote of thanks to all the dignitaries who made possible to connect with us virtually. On behalf of our principal, staff, and management, I express my heartfelt thanks to our speaker of the day, Dr. H.S. Ashok, for enlightening with his commendable talk on strategies for curriculum design and development. Sir, your talk gave us an insight and better understanding on developing new curriculum for the acquisition of knowledge. Thank you, sir. I express my profound gratitude to our principal, Dr. Sister Lalita Thomas, for her inspiration, love, and support. Thank you, sister. I also express my sincere thanks to our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Carol Stanley, and program coordinator, Dr. Rama Raju, IQAC members, technical staff, and all others for their support and tireless efforts. This vote of thanks would be incomplete without expressing my gratitude to all the participants who made this day very effective. Thank you, one and all. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.